just thinking about women being half of the workforce, more than half of the breadwinners or co-breadwinners of their actual homes, how do we ensure that women are participating better in the economy, and by sort of making the underpinning of the economic opportunity agenda to be about pay parity. The research showed what $14 billion more would be added to the economy if women were just paid the same as men in the same roles and same positions. So that was one piece of the agenda. But then looking at sort of how do we look at tax and budget and supporting and investing in women through making sure that they can see a doctor when they're sick, that we could close the coverage gap would be part of that policy solution. And then making sure that there was an earned income tax credit expansion for us, matching the federal program would be a part of that platform. And then minimum wage, increasing it to 1010 as part of that policy platform. And then the child care tax subsidies. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah.
And why that was such a critical part of mobilizing people.
Right. The women's community really has been pretty single issue in Georgia, and it was really exciting for GBPI to flex our muscle and lay out a vision to get women in tax and budget conversations and get them a place at the table. And I think the low-income child care program is a great example. There's widespread support on both sides of the aisle for an increase in child care. We know it's good for early learning. We know that will then make sure students are ready to learn once they enter the education system. And parents need to know that when they go to work, their child's going to not just be somewhere safe, but somewhere where they're really going to thrive and learn.
That's right.
Well, it turns out in Georgia, it wasn't a policy issue, it was an investment issue. And this gave us an opportunity to really work with childcare and early learning and business community advocates to say the state needs to be putting more money into this program, because at the time we were only reaching a small fraction of families who would qualify. And since that time, that work has really grown. We've got a number of different allies now at the table, and that has really turned into a full-fledged campaign through a child care affordability work group that will continue on into 2018 and beyond. And one of the most exciting things that came about was this past year, the state invested the first new funds in this program that we have seen in over 20 budget cycles. So we've got a little bit of wind at our back, and we know that that work will continue. And what was great about building those partnerships was we really filled a need that that ended up needing to be a longer-term vision. It wasn't just a one-year project.
That's right. So the sort of foundation for us with our economic opportunity agenda for Georgia women then led to, well, let's talk more about how we can start building wealth for women and look at the gender wealth gap. And so that enabled us to even talk more about areas around housing, entrepreneurship, housing being the critical asset that helps build wealth for women, but also entrepreneurship, which is an exciting area where women are really thriving in Atlanta and in Georgia. And then also looking at just paid leave as another way to help women be able to build wealth.
And not just to stay at home and take care of children, but who are also then the primary caregivers for the generation that came before them.
That's right. So the other part of this, sort of as GBPI laid out these big policy platforms, right, an agenda for economic, security for women. So let's talk about like what really was exciting was the mobilization we saw and what you were doing.
It was great. Yeah. So Georgia is blessed. We have this fantastic program called the Georgia Women's Policy Institute. It's a project of the YWCA of Greater Atlanta. And through the course of this project, GBPI has been able to serve as a mentor to now 3 cohorts of a very diverse set of young women who want to step up and exercise that civic voice in various ways. And so the agenda has been a great training tool and mobilization tool for those cohorts, as well as other organizations that we have never worked with in the past, like the Junior League, as a good example. The other thing to me that's been really interesting about this is how we have been able to help change the conversation, I think, around the issues of economic security, but around tax and budget issues and how women need to have the seat at the table. And that's been really exciting, and I think that work will continue for us.
Yes, and that's our goal.
One of the most exciting things is that the issues that we are lifting up have already gotten support from both sides of the aisle. A great example is the investment in the low-income child care program that we talked about. First new infusion of funds that we've seen in a decade.
That's right.
And that, of course, came at the hands of power from both Republicans and Democrats in the process. The other thing that I've been really surprised and excited about is the support for a state earned income tax credit from both Republicans and Democrats. And we're sort of in the moment right now where we're trying trying to really take advantage of the support that we're seeing from some very powerful leaders, conservative leaders in the State House of Representatives, but also a real strong voice in the State Senate coming from the Democratic side saying we need a bottom-up tax credit to help working Georgia families, and even better if that tax credit is going to benefit women and households that have children.
That's right. And I think the nice hook of this, even with the business community, right, is sort of the tie-in with, children who are in more stable, economically secure homes. Typically, the outcomes associated with that in terms of academics and educational attainment, health outcomes for children who are in more economically secure homes, opportunities for women to, again, continue to work and build skill, long-term, workforce issues. So we've also had some unusual suspects where business community is also echoing child care as an issue and a barrier, quite honestly, for working families, and how they, even as good corporate citizens, need to start thinking about that more holistically. And so from a policy standpoint, I think it's, where Georgia is right now in terms of our skilled workforce and the fact that we're growing, one of the fastest growing states still, but still have tremendous business needs, right? A lot of our jobs are going unfilled. So if we can look at ways to help women and families have better access to those, and again, making sure women and families have access to childcare so women can work and participate, I think that's brought in a lot of leaders from both sides to look at this as an economic issue.
The other part of this that takes sort of the politics out of it is the way that we designed the agenda from the outset, and that was we really went out into a community and we asked experts. We talked to organizations that provide direct services that would be impacted by these policies. We talked to women entrepreneurs themselves. We worked with the Latin American Association's Latino Entrepreneurship Program. What barriers do you have? How might state policy or state investment help further your business success? And that was a really unique way for GBPI to put this research document together, and I think that's furthered the support that we've gotten, and frankly build a messenger base because people were at the table with us from the very beginning.
From the very beginning, that's right. So it wasn't done in isolation. There was a group of individuals who helped weigh in and build it. If it broader at the federal level, I mean, a lot of these opportunities are going to be influenced by federal level investment in programs, from Medicaid, helping those who need access to health care who don't currently get it in their private employment opportunities, but also child care and making sure that those dollars are still available to states and the potential changes in federal landscape around the budget. So that's really important to have sort of that broader national sort of agenda to make sure families are undergirded in a better way, particularly those who are struggling and striving to stay in the middle class, let alone get to it. So I think there's definitely some opportunities to frame these things up more nationally and protecting the federal earned income tax credit. I mean, of course, if that program is made whole and continued and sustained, that gives states the impetus to continue to match and broaden and expand theirs.
And we don't have all the answers, and we know that, but what I do know is this conversation around affordable housing and home ownership and making sure that families have a safe, affordable place to raise their kids in a neighborhood that has good schools and good transportation is very much a local and state issue, but it is absolutely a federal issue too, and relies significantly on the federal budget context as well.
Absolutely.